It's late. Everyone's gone home. The nurses do their rounds. And then it gets quiet. There's a window across from this bed, and I've been looking at it for a few days now. There's nothing particularly interesting outside. A parking lot, a light on a pole. But I look at it anyway. I wanted to say something while I still can. Not because I think I have something important to say. I'm not sure I do. But there are things sitting in me right now that didn't have anywhere to go. And I thought, I don't know, maybe someone will hear this. Maybe it won't matter. But I wanted to say it out loud at least once. My name is Richard. I'm 73 years old. I worked in insurance for 31 years. I had a wife named Carol. I have 2 kids, a daughter named Michelle, and a son named Patrick. I have 4 grandchildren I can never quite remember the ages of without counting backward. That's my life. That's the summary.
The thing is, I keep waiting to feel like it makes sense. Like at some point, the whole thing arranges itself into a shape that I can look at and say, yes, that was a life. That was mine. But it doesn't do that. It just sits there. A pile of Tuesday mornings and car payments and meals I don't remember eating. And I'm not saying that as a complaint. I want to be clear about that. I'm not here to complain. I'm just saying that when you get to where I am right now, in this bed, looking at that parking lot light, things look different. Not dramatically different. Not like some curtain got pulled back. More like the focus shifted, just slightly. And now I can see things that I couldn't quite see before. Or wouldn't. I'm not sure which one it was. Wouldn't, probably. I grew up in a house where you didn't make a fuss. My father was that kind of man. You worked. You didn't complain. You took care of your family. Those were the rules. Nobody said them out loud, but everybody knew them. And I followed them. I genuinely believed in them, actually. Still do in some ways. But somewhere in following those rules, I think I stopped checking in with myself. I stopped asking, wait, is this what I want? Is this the direction I chose? Or is this just the direction I kept going because stopping felt harder than continuing? I think mostly it was the second thing. And you don't notice that when it's happening. That's what I want to say. You really genuinely do not notice, because each individual day feels fine. You wake up, you have your coffee, you go to work, you come home, you watch something on television, you go to bed, and that's fine. That day was fine. It's only when you try to count how many of those days there were that something starts to feel strange. 31 years at the same company. I did the math once, lying here. That's somewhere around 11,000 days. 11,000 mornings I drove to that building. 11,000 lunches at my desk or in the break room or at the sandwich place across the street that closed in 2008. And I can remember maybe 40 of them, maybe 50 if I really try. That's the thing nobody tells you. Time doesn't feel like it's moving fast. It feels slow when you're in it. Painfully slow sometimes. I remember sitting in meetings thinking this will never end. And then it ended. And then another one started. And then the year ended. And then the next year. And somehow 31 of them went by. I kept thinking later. That word, later. I could build a whole monument to that word. The trips Carol wanted to take. She wanted to go to Portugal. She'd had this idea about Portugal for years. She read about it somewhere. She talked about it every few years, just brought it up casually. And I always said, yes, we'll do that. Let's plan it. We never planned it. Not because we couldn't afford it, not because something was in the way, just because there was always something slightly more pressing, or I was tired, or it felt like a lot to organize, and Portugal wasn't going anywhere. Carol passed 4 years ago. We were married 46 years. She was a third-grade teacher for most of her career. She was very good at it. I know that because her former students would come up to her sometimes, grown adults, and you could see it on their faces, the way they looked at her. She mattered to those kids. She never really said she was disappointed about Portugal. That wasn't her way. But I knew. You know these things after 46 years. There was a particular way she'd get quiet sometimes when a conversation turned to travel or to other people's trips, a certain kind of quiet that I recognized. I told myself she understood, that she knew I was tired, that I was managing a lot, that we'd get to it eventually. I told myself a lot of things to avoid having to change. That's the honest version. The real version is that I was comfortable and I didn't want to disrupt the comfort. Change takes energy, and I was always saving my energy for something else. I could never quite say what that something else was, but I was definitely saving it. And now there's nothing left to save it for. Patrick, my son, he called this morning. He lives in Denver. He has for about 8 years now. Good job, 2 kids. He seems genuinely happy, I think, though we've never talked about it directly. We don't really have those conversations. That's something I passed on to him, I realize, that particular inability, the way we talk around things instead of saying them. When he was maybe 15, 16, there was a period where he wanted to be an architect. He used to draw these floor plans in his spare time, just for fun. I never asked him about them. I don't know why. I'd see them on his desk and just not say anything. Maybe I thought he'd grow out of it. Maybe I thought it wasn't a serious thing and I didn't want to encourage something impractical. He ended up in finance. He's done well. But I've thought about those drawings. I've thought about them a lot in the last few months. I wonder if he still thinks about them. I've never asked. I should have asked by now. I've had 8 years of phone calls to ask. I still might. I don't know if I will. That's a strange thing about being here. You'd think it would make everything simple, that all the things you were avoiding would just become obviously worth doing. You'd think the closeness of the end would make you brave. But I'm still me. I still hesitate. I still think about how a conversation might go awkwardly, and I pull back. Some things don't change even now. That surprised me. I want to talk about ordinary days for a minute, because I think that's where most of it happened, most of the missing. I used to come home from work around 6, sometimes 6:30. Carol would usually have something going on the stove, and we'd eat, and we'd talk about whatever had happened, and then I'd sit in the living room. I had a chair, you know the kind, brown leather, got softer over the years. I'd sit in that chair and watch television or read the paper, and Carol would be doing something nearby, sometimes reading, sometimes on the phone with her sister. And we were together. We were in the same room, technically, but I wasn't really present. I was recovering from the day. That's how I thought of it, recovering. Every night I was recovering from the day. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. It was normal.
It felt like the correct way to spend an evening. But now I sit here and I think, what if I just put the paper down? What if I just said, tell me something? How was your actual day? Not the summary, the real version. We could have had that conversation every night. 40 years of those conversations. 40 years of actually knowing each other day by day as we both changed. Instead, we knew each other the way you know a house you've lived in for a long time. You know where everything is. You know which floorboards creak, but you stopped actually seeing it years ago. I loved her. I want to say that clearly. I loved her. I'm not saying I didn't. But love without attention it's not enough. And I didn't know that, or I knew it and I didn't act on it, which amounts to the same thing. There was a friend of mine, Gerald. We worked together early on. Then he moved to a different company. We had lunch every few months for years. And then at some point, I couldn't tell you exactly when, it became every 6 months, and then once a year. And then I'd think about calling him and think, I should do that, and then I wouldn't. We weren't fighting. There was no falling out. I liked Gerald. He made me laugh in a specific way that not many people did. He had this dry humor, very understated, and we just clicked in that way. I found out from someone else that he passed away. This was maybe 6 years ago. Heart attack. And I thought, we still had lunch to have. In my mind, we still had lunch to have. He was still on the list of things I was going to get to. He wasn't on the list. That's the thing. There was no list. I was just telling myself there was. I think what I'm describing is a kind of sleep. Not literal sleep, but a kind of habitual not noticing. You move through your days with enough competence that nothing breaks down, nothing goes seriously wrong, and that competence feels like success. You're
Managing. You're handling things. But managing isn't the same as living, and I confused them. For a very long time, I genuinely confused them.
Michelle, my daughter, she and I have a better relationship than Patrick and I do. She's more like Carol. She comes right at things. She'll look at you and ask you something directly, and you either answer or you change the subject. And she knows when you've changed the subject. She was here yesterday. She sat right there in that chair, and she held my hand, and we just sat. We didn't say much, and there was nothing wrong with that. I actually felt close to her in a way I can't always explain, and I thought we could have sat like this earlier. We could have sat like this any time. It didn't require this. Why did it require this? I think part of it is that we believe we're permanent, not consciously. Nobody consciously believes they're going to live forever. But in practice, in the daily decisions you make, you act as if you are, as if the person across from you will always be there, as if the conversation you didn't have today can happen next week, as if next week is guaranteed. And it's not. I know that now in a way I didn't know it before, not philosophically, actually. Next week is not guaranteed. It just isn't. And I don't mean that as a warning. I mean it as a fact that I didn't absorb until it was too late to do anything about it. And there's something almost funny about that. Almost. I played golf. For a lot of years, I played golf. Every Saturday morning, a group of us. And I didn't even particularly like golf. I liked the routine of it. I liked having somewhere to be on Saturday morning. I liked being the kind of man who played golf. But I could have been doing anything on those Saturday mornings. Anything at all. I never asked myself what I actually wanted to do on Saturday mornings. I just fell into the golf,
and then the golf became part of who I was, and to stop playing golf would have been to change something about myself, and changing felt unnecessary when nothing was broken. Nothing was broken. That was always my test. Is anything broken? No? Then we're fine. But that's not much of a standard for a life. I've been thinking about what I would do differently. People probably expect that. They probably expect me to have a list, go to Portugal, call Patrick Moore, put down the paper. But it's not really like that. It's more like, I wish I had been curious about my own life. That's the simplest way I can put it. I wish I had looked at what I was doing and asked, honestly, is this what I want? Is this the version of myself I'd choose? I almost never asked that. I just continued. And continuing, when you do it for long enough, becomes indistinguishable from deciding. But it isn't deciding. Continuing and deciding are not the same thing. I continued my way through most of 73 years. Carol used to say I was hard to reach. She said it a few times over the years, usually not as a criticism, more as an observation. You're hard to reach, Richard. I thought she meant I was reserved, private, which I am, and I thought that was fine. I thought being private was just a personality type, not a problem. But what she meant, I think, and I'm only now understanding this, is that even when I was right there, physically present, there was something slightly behind glass. You could see me, but you couldn't quite get to me. I kept a comfortable distance from almost everything, from emotions I didn't know how to handle, from conversations that might have gotten real, from my own life sometimes. I observed it from a slight remove, and I told myself that was just how I was made. But I think I chose it. Bit by bit, I chose that distance because getting close to things felt risky. It's easier to stay slightly detached. Nothing can hurt you quite as much, but nothing can reach you either. There's a version of my life that I can almost see from here. Not a dramatic version, not a different career, moved to another country version. Just the same life with more attention paid. Same job, probably, same house, same Saturday golf even, but with the paper put down, with the question asked, with Portugal planned, even if it took 2 years to plan, with Gerald called back that one last time. That version of my life isn't very far from the one I had. The gap between them was never enormous. That's the part that stays with me. The gap was never enormous. The changes required were never huge, just small adjustments made consistently over time. The same way small inattentions made consistently added up to what I'm looking at now. I'm tired. This machine helps with the breathing, and you'd think that would make things easier, but it's still work breathing. More work than it used to be. Patrick's coming next week, or sooner, maybe. We'll see. I keep thinking about those floor plans, the ones he used to draw. I wonder if he ever thinks about them, or if he closed that door so long ago that it doesn't even register anymore. I'd like to ask him. I keep saying I'll ask him. You know, I've been lying here thinking that I'm going to figure something out, like there's a thought I haven't finished yet, and if I can just get to the end of it, something will settle. But I don't think that's how it works. I think I'm just going to keep circling. The same few things. Carol in the kitchen, the floor plans, Portugal, Gerald, the paper I never put down. The parking lot light is still on. I don't know what I expected. I think I